Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Leadership Void podcast. I'm Enrique with my co host Vince to bring you the best in our veteran military spouse and first responder community. And Vince will introduce today's guest.
Thanks, Enrique. Happy December, everyone. I am smiling ear to ear because I have the pleasure of talking about this gentleman right here. His name is Bruce Stewart, Dr. Bruce Stewart. He is the CEO of a small world solution from Boynton Beach, Florida. Before he talks about what he's doing in the world, let's first dive in and talk about him. Hey, Bruce, welcome to the show. Let's start off. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vince and Enrique, for the invite. I am thoroughly appreciative of getting an opportunity to spend some time with you. So, I'm actually the CEO of Small World Solutions. We're what I like to call an inclusive diversity consulting company that really helps organizations connect the dots with regard to their diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility strategies. So, really kind of focusing in on teamwork and team development and leadership. So, just again, happy to be here.
Well, thank you, Bruce, for doing that work. We know how important it is for those of us that may have experienced some of that inequity. We know that it's needed. It is a time where it is more loud than before, right? The message is getting out there. And talking about small world, because we all been deployed, we all been out there. We know how small the world really is when you're running again around people and say you're in Hong Kong. They say, "Hey,"
Right.
But tell us about Small World Solutions.
Yeah. So, well, I think, and I failed to mention early on that I'm also, as Vince knows, a veteran. I retired from Air Force as a colonel. Now, those of you that might have been in the Army, don't hold that against me, but the showers were warm and we did have cable when we were deployed. But small world, just to give you just the inkling how we think about this. The idea of small world comes from 6 degrees of separation, like that old Kevin Bacon game, that old axiom that we're only 6 handshakes away from anybody in the world, when in fact we really are, based on the research, are in fact 6 handshakes away from anybody in the world. So as I got to thinking about that, I thought that was a powerful metaphor to approach the kind of work that we do with regard to diversity, inclusion, accessibility, and equity. In that, in trying to implement change, it's right there for our taking because the world is really small. And when you think about the world being small, then you realize the actions that you take and the things that you do can have an impact on folks that you might not even know. And so, how can we take advantage of just the way our physical and mental worlds are connected in this kind of 6 degrees, this kind of small world architecture? Can we take advantage of that to really implement once and for all a successful change when it comes to making sure that people get treated fairly? So the whole idea for us, and in my thinking, is that we want to create a small world mindset and people to see the world as small versus seeing the world as big and scary, right? And when you really think about what's going on in our society today, it's really almost like these two camps, right? One that sees the world as small, that understands that we're all connected, that what one does can impact other folks. And then the other camp kind of sees the world as big, that we have to keep people out, push away instead of pull together. So that's kind of the thinking behind Small World.
I definitely love the small camp and big camp mentality there and the 6 degrees of separation. I totally understand what you're doing some great things, Bruce. Now, how, as you see it, as the impact that pandemic had on either the society as a whole, as a small world or big world? What are your thoughts on that?
So, it's just so you know, this is not like a unabashed plug of a upcoming book I have, but it is an unabashed plug of an upcoming book I have, Enrique. And Enrique, don't cut this part out. So this, I know he's the editor, Vince. He gives me that side eye. But I have a book coming. I have a book coming out in spring called The Race Ahead, and it's been interesting doing some of that research around this book. And one of the things that the pandemic, and I'm sure you all agree with me, has really impacted is the ability of us as folks to be able to talk to each other face to face and in person. And most of us now are kind of doing this hybrid work thing where, most of the time we're at home working, we go in the office. But what we found in the research is that those connections are frayed. And the biggest epidemic that's facing our country, our society right now, is not like drug abuse and those things that gets all the news. You know what it is? It's an epidemic of loneliness, of people feeling isolated from one another. And when you feel isolated from one another, the anxiety goes up. And when the anxiety goes up, you start to see everything as a threat, right? You start to migrate over into that big camp where the world becomes this big scary place. And so that's kind of what we're seeing as an impact of this pandemic. And so one of the things that we're really trying to focus on is this notion of social capital, right? And I think in folks in the business of diversity, inclusion, and equity, it's always been kind of hard to tell people specifically what you're trying to do besides recruitment and retention, all the things that most people, would think that our profession is about. What our profession is really about is helping organizations and communities build social capital, which is the trust that comes as a result of connections between people. Like we have accountants in organizations, they worry about financial management. We have the HR people, they do human capital. We have patent and attorneys for the intellectual capital, but we don't have a group of people that really focus on social capital, which I think in the 21st century is going to be the most important type of capital that there is.
Well, as we address this social capital, because I think we've been seeing a lot of that in social media, how people are presenting themselves. Branding has become a big thing, personal branding, not just the company brand, but the personal brand. So what's on the horizon for Small World Solutions, given this change and advancement in social capital?
Yeah. Thanks, Ricky, for that. So the one thing that and I just talked to my folks about this yesterday, is when it comes to branding for us, our message is one of togetherness. That sometimes, depending on what side you're on, you can look at some decisions or actions that the other camp makes that, what initially comes to your head is that, these people are crazy or, they're evil or whatever the case may be. And what we stress is that this notion and concept of social capital, the primary way that you start to build it is to recognize and acknowledge the right of people to think differently. And when you acknowledge the right of people to think differently, then you start to see that all of us have a different rank order of priorities and values. And it's not that people are evil, it's just that they have a different rank order of their values. And once you understand it, it doesn't mean that you agree, but now you have some common ground you can start to build on. And so that's kind of what, when we talk about branding, that's kind of what the direction that we're going in is that, together is better. And there's a science behind it. And that if we look at this in terms of science and social networks, like just real quickly, one of the interesting parts of research that came out recently is that the biggest predictor of a person's success in their organization or their community is not the color of their skin, right? Or whether or not they have an accent or the religion that they practice or don't practice, but it's how they're connected within their social network. It's the diversity of their social network. So it's about connections, right? Versus color, because we all know that intuitively that we can have friends of all different shapes, shades and sizes, but it's that personal relationship we have with each other that makes the difference, right? So that's kind of how we look in the future to brand ourselves.
You are at the cutting edge of DEI. So I will say that you are the Yoda, the young master.
Hey, I'm taller than him, Ben. Not by much, Enrique, but that was another personal shot at me by Vince. Do I get paid for this podcast, by the way?
You get paid in love, brother. You get paid in love. But no, Bruce, thank you for sharing that. Connection runs so deep. And as you mentioned, it doesn't matter the shape, size, or color of your skin or, who you are, but those connections add value. to that social capital, as you mentioned earlier. Now, how do you stay at the cutting edge by sharpening your saw and leading your company? What is those things you do in your spare time to help you do that in the leadership arena?
Yeah, yeah, man. So, like anybody, I'll tell you that. Well, I spend like half my day just basically reading. I'm kind of a weirdo when it comes to having a pastime between sports and reading research reports. So, kind of figured that one out. But that and I also, and you guys probably do this too, but I also kind of force myself into other social circles where I might not be the most comfortable, right? Like I'll purposely, intentionally read things from different, political or societal views, and go to activities around the same way. So, and then with my team, I just try to be uh, create an environment that really focuses and emphasizes psychological safety. And by doing that, people feel like they can just have a conversation with me if they feel like something is not up to standards or they're having some issues. And then that's a way that I kind of stay in tune, and kind of for me keeps me kind of sharp. Because sometimes one of the things that is the challenge for folks like us sometimes is that we preach to everybody that you have to bring in people and get different perspectives, but inside we kind of know we got the right answer. We kind of know and that's called intellectual humility. And when people practice intellectual humility, in other words, we're humble in recognizing, acknowledging that we don't have all the answers, then it just makes for a better team and makes you a better person. So those are some of the things that I do to kind of keep my edge.
And that's a great approach at not only self-development, but development of others. I've often said, is there anything that I know is that I don't know everything.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
And you,
Enrique, my wife makes sure that she keeps that at the forefront for me. I mean, man, not a day goes by, I speak
what
to crowds of thousands, man, but my wife says, "Hey, you gonna take out the garbage?" You know, you know how it is. I mean, so
it's funny, but but right, and that's a indicator that you got the right people on your team, right? When they feel comfortable enough to tell you exactly how it
that's
is.
right. That's right. Hey, Bruce,
And
those two plaids aren't going together. You gotta. Enrique Vince is a fashion guy. That's why I said that.
well, I don't know. You guys have got something going on here, but I'm so happy that that you're actually addressing your personal development needs as you're addressing the development needs of your people. And we've had leaders that have done that with us.
Mm,
They've given us advice, they've given us their wisdom for us to take on into our toolbox and allow us to excel in the future. So, what advice did you receive as you was going along that you would like to share with an emerging leader today that will help them get there a little more safe?
yeah, yeah, no, so there's so many, stories I could tell in answering this question because I've had so many people, and like a lot of us, we've had so many people help us along our career journey. But when I think about a time that I was really impacted, it was by my late father, who's you know, was at the time my best friend and is still my best friend, even though he's been gone 20 years. And I remember I wanted to be a helicopter pilot, smart guy and everything, wanted to be a helicopter pilot, had been successful in everything else. And I failed the test for, the flights, and I mean, at that, I just, completely lost it, right? And so the only person I could talk to was my dad. And, back in the day, the way to get you, out of your depression, my father felt like was to take you on a highway trip, stop by and get a big box, a bucket of Church's fried chicken and spit chicken bones. I mean, we didn't mean to litter, but at that time, throwing the, So by by the time we got to our destination, presto change, I was back to myself and went back, retook the test a month later and almost scored a perfect score. And so my point to that is not about getting a bucket of church's chicken. But my point to that is that sometimes when you feel like you're at your lowest point, find the upside of that failure. And I know, the vogue thing to do today is, oh yeah, fail fast, everybody's, but I mean, the way we came up, you don't try to fail. Failing ain't something that was going to get you promoted to the next rank. But my father taught me a real good lesson that day, and that was, even when you think some things are at the lowest point, find the upside to it, pick yourself up, and go back at it even harder this time. Right? Have faith in yourself, and so that's the thing that I would tell aspiring and young leaders is that you're gonna fail, you're gonna have some real obstacles that are gonna be, maybe insurmountable. You've been embarrassed or whatever, but you got to dust yourself off and find the upside and go at it again.
Well, kudos to you for sharing that great story. And it also shares that to the audience that you don't need to necessarily do this alone. Have some trusted agent confidant to either take you on the road trip for a bucket of chicken, but you get you out of your element and look at the silver lining that, things are going to be better off if you see it, not that failure, but as an opportunity to learn. So thank you for sharing that great, that moment of learning that your dad still shining down on you, saying, yeah. Thank you, Bruce, for sharing that story for the audience and for the world. Now, you, Bruce, had a great journey in the Air Force, a great journey as a CEO. Any memorable leadership moment you would like to share with our audience today?
I was a combat comm commander, or a communications comm commander, and I had about 150 folks in my command. And you all remember this. Like as a commander, you get a unit climate survey, and for those of you out there in TV land, that's kind of like a employee satisfaction survey of your leadership if you're in the commander position. And I just, I when the team showed up to do the survey, I was happy to see them because I knew my folks were gonna, feel like I was like Caesar, little Caesar. I mean, cheering, I was gonna get scores that, that outshine any other commander and all that kind of stuff. They came back two weeks later, and the guy that was leading the climate survey team had a kind of ashen look on his face, like a look of horror. And I said, what's wrong? He said, if I were you, Commander, I'd take the next bus out of this place because you're about 20 minutes from floating, belly up in the river. I said, what the heck? My climate survey was so bad, it was just ridiculous. And so when they started drilling down into numbers, he was a little bit more positive because he felt like the thing that really brought my scores down was that my troops felt I was unapproachable. Because whether you believe it or not, I'm like a natural introvert. So it's just comfortable for me to spend a lot of time in my office, not interacting with the folks. And even walking down the hallways, I wouldn't say hi. Thinking about work. It wasn't that I was disregarding them, but people take that and took that personally, and so reflected in my score. So the thing that I would say, and my advice to leaders is, in the era of the 21st century, it's not about top down, it's about inside out, right? It's about understanding what makes people tick so you can get the best out of them and not leading just by your authority alone. Authority is a short-term answer to getting people to do things. But understanding and respecting and connecting with people is the long-term aspect of leadership. And that's the leaders the type of leadership that is sustainable. So
yeah, I love that. And as senior enlisted leaders, both Vince and I know that climate survey speaks a mouthful on paper, right? And it does open eyes to things that we are blind to. I'm sure it caused some challenges, some internal challenges, some internal change. And what's interesting is everybody has strategies around these moments, but what do you use, or what strategies do you implement when these challenges and change come?
First is not to take it personally, right? Because we all, I shouldn't say all, but I know some folks, including myself, have we all like to sing the song of, oh yeah, I appreciate feedback, really, really, you know. And so if you're like me, yeah, I say I appreciate feedback, but but first thing is not to take it personally, and once you're able to move beyond the personal aspect of it, to really focus on some things that you can do, or some processes or programs or policies you can change. I think that's the best way, to approach this. And just, again, in today's world of leadership, to me, it's really about this kind of notion of whether you want to call it inclusive leadership or social leadership or distributed leadership. It's about connecting to the folks that you represent, right? The folks that you lead. So,
hearing you speak about, when you receive this feedback, depending on your journey, if you are all about your ego and pride, you're going to take that a certain way. But if you're humble and you're servant leader and you've already been down that road, you take that as a constructive feedback and you look at the silver lining, as you mentioned early on, right? And here you scoring a perfect score just about after taking the helicopter test later on. And I love what you said about it's not about top down, it's about inside out. And that's great strategies, great information. We love to continue on, but we're giving folks a snippet of Dr. Bruce Stewart. So if they want to know more about you or connecting to Small World Solutions, how do they go about doing so?
Yeah, so a couple of ways. You can go to our website, which is www.thesmallworldgroup, all one word, .com. And that's www.thesmallworldgroup.com. And then you can go to my personal website, jbrucestewart.com. www.jbrucestewart.com. And those are the ways you can get a hold of us.
Well, outstanding, folks. We're going to have that as part of the show notes and video so that you can get a hold of Bruce Stewart and his services. We really appreciate you coming on. And folks, if you want to get a hold of us at the Leadership Void podcast, theleadershipvoid@gmail.com is where you'll send that correspondence. We'll look at all the things that come in. Maybe you want a specific topic covered on the podcast or a guest. We would love to see that. So please communicate that way. And don't forget, Radio Check, 1st and the 15th, 1900, 7 p.m. Eastern for the civilian folks, and where we open the airways for all those that are out there that maybe don't have a voice, would like to get on and speak or get some resources. This last one we had was a fun one. And so join us every 1st and 15th at Radio Check as we open the airways for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And last but not least, we want to thank our sponsor, VEI, for taking care of us, and we taking care of partnership with, building new entrepreneurs in the veteran community. It's all about, making our world a better place. It's today all about the Small World Solutions and Bruce Stewart, though. So again, thank you for being on our show. Hope you have a great day and a successful future, sir.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.